All right, Shalom. Let's start out by saying, Call Halayim La Yahweh, Bashem Yahweh Shai, Bashem Harakak Wadash Ma'amah. Double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone, double honors to our elder apostle as well, her one by Charlotte down here in the Lions Den camp. Salutations to the Akim that are pushing the truth, sincerity, and truth, and peace and blessings to the men, women, and children that believe their name, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. All right, I'm Khanat by Charlotte from the Lions Den Charlotte camp, and this is a exhortation, spiritual hydration, inspirational, uplifting type of video. And Lord willing, it does its purpose for the hopeful elect, the ones that truly believe in the name of Yahweh Shemel Shai. All right, so I want to go into something. Um, Kind of touched on it with one of my previous videos in the past, last week, and I want to touch on it some more. I have some, you know, individuals, not to go into detail, that are very close to me, and they were explaining to me, you know, how they're dealing with depression, and I wish I could take, especially the ones that are super close to me, people that I love, you know, people that I'm able to be vulnerable around, like the camp, my woman, children, you know, and I wish I could take away all their anxieties and just throw it in the water and just, but this is the best way I know how to help with these videos. As as well, I'm dealing with stuff myself and taking it day by day. So I want to go into what is depression. I think I did this one time dealing with anxiety, but I want to go into what is depression, right? Where did it come from, and how do we overcome it, right? So you already know the answer to the last question. How do we overcome it? We overcome it through Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. But how do we get to that point? Because there's so many things that blocks us from the realization of what things really are. And we sort of see things from a negative perspective sometimes, even being in the spirit. Because why? Because we are in the flesh. So if you have emotions and things like this going on, does that mean the Lord doesn't love you? No. Does that mean that you're unrighteous? Our righteousness is as filthy rags. Does that mean because we feel these emotions? Does that mean you're wicked? No, it does not. Because 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 you probably the more these things try to affect you, the further away from wickedness you probably are. But but these emotions try to trigger thoughts in our mind from the past when we were in our old versions of ourselves to try to uh, awaken our former selves and for us to conduct our mindset in that manner, right? So, how do we overcome that? All right, we overcome it when your house. We overcome it fully when your house shot shows up and and kills the curse of death, defeats death, meaning defeat these mortal bodies, because these bodies is the only reason why we feel any of the type of those emotions, and the acknowledgement of it is the only way we feel it. And that's what I want. One of the things I want to go to. How did it come in? How did depression and anxiety and all that come in play? Where do we first feel that emotion? All right. So first, I want to go into what is depression by definition. All right, it's very important so we can understand what we're dealing with and why we're dealing with it. It says depression is a common yet serious mood disorder that negatively affects how you feel, think, and handle daily activities. So now we have things that look at it. It's a mood disorder. So if you think about it, a mood disorder. If we put blockers in the way to disrupt that mood disorder, it doesn't exist. So I say that because we make it exist because of how we feel in the flesh. We make it a thing, right? Because of the flesh. Now, that's twofold because spiritually and you have physically because there's things that we put in our body and does to our body that can alter our thought process that creates chemical imbalances in our brain and it forces the body to react to certain things a certain way in a negative fashion. So you can physically, by not taking care of your body, bring forth depression, and you can spiritually do the same thing by not taking care of your mind. You see that? It goes hand in hand. So while we do a lot of praying, a lot of praying, right? But we're not fasting. We're not cleansing the body of certain things. You know what I'm saying? We have to balance everything out. Yes, we're driving the spirit to force the body, all right? The spirit is going to force the body into righteousness on that physical aspect, forcing it according to the laws. The dietary laws are going to help a lot with that, eating the correct things. You know, so now that's a key point. Depression is a common yet serious mood disorder that negatively affects how you feel, think, and handle daily activities. All right. So now it's going to have a negative impact on how you look at anything, even when it's positive. Even when it's positive, depression will have you look at it from a negative aspect when we're not supposed to. You know, you being a servant of Yahweh Shemel Shai, depression will have you look at yourself in a negative aspect, and anything that resembles that, you will look at it negatively. Depression will have you feel like when people are trying to help you, it'll feel like they're hurting you. And depression will make you feel like when people are trying to understand how you feel and understand you, all right, you feel like it'll make you feel like, or when people, you know what I'm saying, make you feel like that they're not trying to understand or they just don't give a fuck. And that's the depression will cause you to have a subjective reality that doesn't even really exist, but you create that in your mind because of this emotion and feeling that stirs up things in your body and in your mind. All right. So it says, unlike normal sadness, it involves persistent feeling of emptiness, hopelessness, and loss of interest in activities lasting for most of the day for at least 2 weeks. All right. So now, if are you hopeless? No, no. We have Yahweh by Shemal Shah. Are we empty? No. All right. Hold on. Let's start with that. Hopeless. Are we hopeless? Okay, let's get this. Let me get it. Let me get it. Hold on 1 second. All right, let's go to Romans real quick. Are we? Let's start with that. No, let's emptiness. Emptiness. Are we empty? Let me see. Emptiness. Let's go with that. Um, is it? No, that's not it. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Um, hold on 1 second. Um, hold on, quick. All right, this is that's what it is. I had it all wrong. All right, let's go to James chapter 1. It says, No, James chapter 2, it says, my brother. All right, so we're going into like depression will have you feeling the involves persistent feeling of emptiness, right? Being empty, lacking, needing a void to be filled, right? But we're not, okay? This is James chapter 1, verse 2. It says, my brethren, count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptations, meaning struggles, trial periods, adversities, afflictions, right? Knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But what it's supposed to do is teach us patience, which is a positive thing. But what it does, it lets us look at it in a negative aspect as if we're worthless. You see that? But the Lord is working a work within us, teaching us patience on us waiting on Him. All right, verse 4 it says, but let patience have her perfect work, right? That you may be perfect. So we're being perfected through these we can acknowledge those emotions, but we don't have to live by them because the Lord says so. That's the bottom line. That's law. All right. So that patience may have her perfect work, that we may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. What is it? Entire. Let me look that word up. Entire, James. But depression will make you feel otherwise. The word entire, meaning complete and all in all its parts, and no part wanting or unsound, entire, whole, right? That you may be entire, right? So but let patience have a perfect work, that you may be entire, meaning complete, be perfect. Let's go perfect, all right? Brought to its finish, that which is perfected, mm, full age, full grown, fully mature, full of integrity and virtue. It says cons- consummate human integrity and virtue, that you may be perfect, entire, wanting nothing. Meaning, I used to think that wanting meaning not wanting anything from this place, but no, what that wanting means not lacking, not being destitute. So, so the Lord will fill us up, but the feeling of depression will make us feel empty. All right, and hopeless, but we're not hopeless, man. The Lord put us in a position of hope, so why would He leave us hopeless? Let's get Romans chapter 8. All right, this is Romans 8 and 1. It says, therefore, there is therefore no condemnation, right? And them which are in Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, who walk not after the flesh, but after the spirit. We have to constantly continue to do that, walking after the spirit, because what? Walking after the flesh brings forth emotions like anxiety, depression, fear, anger, resentment, doubt, you know? Verse 2, it says, for the law of the spirit of life in Yahweh Shai HaMashiach hath made me free from the law of sin and death. For what the law could not do, and that which was weak through the flesh, right? Yahweh sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemneth sin in the flesh. Because that's where this depression comes from. That's where these emotions come from, sin. That's why I want to go back to where all this came from, and how the Lord, even from the beginning, he put it in a way for us to be, um, he put it in a way for us, when it happened, he put us in a position of hope instantly and gave us a way out, even though we fucked up. We're gonna feel how we fucked up, but he instantly made a way to deliver us from ourselves. Because if we couldn't, like sometimes the Lord puts us in a position for us to be alone. But alone with who? Alone with him or alone with ourselves? Because if we're alone with ourselves and we rely on our own thoughts, we're not gonna make it. Our thoughts are literally been set up from the flesh because we were born into sin. That's why we have to flee from the flesh and cleave unto the spirit, man. We cannot listen to ourselves at all. We have to listen to the voice of Yahweh Bashim Shai through these scriptures and through the men of the Lord that are teaching these words. The apostles, elders, and the other men that are pushing this word for the sake of healing the minds of the children of Israel, the elect, healing the minds of the elect. Because the sickness of the mind is the ultimate cause of the deterioration of the body. Everybody wants to heal the body first and then get to the mind. No, you have to heal yourself spiritually first. Because if you don't, the healing of the body is vanity. Because the body is going to be destroyed anyway if you don't fix the spirit that's within. So now, even with our transgression putting us in depression, the Lord made a way out for us. So we're not hopeless. All right. So it says, verse Romans 8:3 says, for what the law could not do, and that it was weak through the flesh, Yahweh sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh for sins, condemning sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the spirit. All right. So it says, for they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the spirit mind the things of the spirit. It says, for to be carnally minded is death, but spiritually minded is life and peace. And you're never gonna find peace being in the carnal mind. But what does this matrix try to do? Like I did in my last video, like how Neo just all of a sudden ended up back in the matrix, don't even know how he got there, but he was the one. You see that? He was the one. And the matrix found a way to somehow pull him back in. That's the same thing that depression and anxiety are trying to do. So we have to make sure we always are residing in the spirit, not the flesh. You know. So I'm gonna let's keep going a little bit on this scripture. Verse 6. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because the carnal mind is enmity against the Most High, for it is not subject to the law of Yahweh, neither can it indeed can be. All right. So then they that are in the flesh cannot please the Most High. All right. So now, so who was the most carnal-minded individual that brought that carnal mind of the knowledge of wickedness uh, to our attention? That's going back to the serpent in the garden. You know. So let's jump down to verse 15. It says, "For we have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but we have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father," because we got bonded into sin, and that's what brought forth that depression. And we, to this day, sometimes we still try to put on fig leaves to cover up, to try to hide the shame, to try to hide depression, to try to hide sadness, instead of turning to the Lord and telling Him what we've been exposed to. That's all Adam had to do. He could have went to the Lord like, "Hey, He could have, when the woman brought it to him, he would be like, "Nah, we ain't finna go through that. We're gonna go straight to the Lord. We're gonna bring it to the Lord." They chose to choose. They chose to go after their own thoughts, not the thoughts that were given to them by the Lord, by Yahweh Shem Shai. All right. Okay. So we have hope. We have hope in the promise that was given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right. So let's get real quick. So symptoms of carrying on depression, right? Emotional symptoms. It says persistent sadness, tearfulness, anxiety, or a general sense of numbness, right? You're going to be, um, what's it called? Emotionally unstable. And that's a really bad state to be in because that's going to start affecting you spiritually. All right. Now you have physical, unexplained aches, headaches, extreme fatigue, and changes in appetite or weight. And, I think um, that could trigger certain things, the body to react a certain way. Like I used to have a serious anxiety problem to where like I would start like shaking and stuff like that. Like at one point in time, I thought it was a seizure, but it wasn't a seizure. It was just a very severe anxiety attack, and I would get like stomach aches and stuff, and my body would exhibit sorts of behavior that nobody could explain. It was all coming from a psychological mindset that my mind was forcing my body into saying there was something wrong with me when it really wasn't wrong, but my body was reacting with symptoms as if there were because of the emotional state that I was in. All right, so we got to be mindful of that and get to the root of the issue when it comes to these illness and sicknesses, man. It says cognitive, difficulty concentrating, remembering details, or making decisions. All right, but that part that just happened. That happens to all of us. Like when we get overwhelmed with certain things. But this right here, this behavioral one, withdrawal from social activities, sleep disturbances, insomnia or oversleeping, and recurrent thoughts of death or suicide. Now, once you get to that point, um, you gotta we don't want to get to that point, but we gotta really, 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 really cleave unto the Lord, man, because that's really a deceptive way of thinking. Because we're supposed to be thinking of life. We're supposed to be thinking of life. Let's get this real quick. This is because that form of death, Yahweh Shai already took that on for us. He took that on for us. He went on a suicide mission for us. We shouldn't be harboring those emotions and feelings at all. We should want to live every day in Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai because he gave us the opportunity of life. This is Romans 8 and 16. It says, the Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are the sons of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. And if children, then heirs of Yahweh, and joint heirs with Yahweh Shai. If so, we so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. So we're gonna suffer a little bit, but understanding we have hope from that suffering. Because what is that doing? Creating patience. And patience is gonna have a perfect work to where we're gonna be fully complete. It says, verse 18 says, for I reckon that the sufferings of this present are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. See that? Glory that shall be revealed in us. So we're gonna be glorified in our sufferings. It says, "For the earnest expectation of the creature waited for the manifestation of the sons of God." We're waiting for the ones that are chosen to be revealed and manifested. It says, "For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by the reason of him who has subjected the same in hope." So we're not hopeless because we're put in this hopeful situation by the Creator Himself. See that? But He gave us a way out. It says, "For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now." Right? And not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. Right? For we are saved by hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For what a man seeth, what why doeth he yet hope for? Like, because the body the body is going to constantly try to feel these emotions because it doesn't understand the spiritual hope that we have in Yahweh Shemel Shai. Because the body needs to see it in order for it to, you know what I'm saying? The spirit doesn't need to see it because the spirit knows where it came from. You see that? Well, the spirit knows where it came from. So we should never feel like, you know, we don't need to be here, especially if we need to be here because we are examples of what righteousness and serving Yahweh by Shem Yahweh Shai is. You know? All right, let's go into the foundation of this. Let's go to this. All right. Well, I'm gonna start it. Where did this come from, man? Where did this come from? Let's start in Genesis chapter 3. All right, so let's go to the beginning. So let me just picture it like this. Um, the Lord creates heaven and the earth. He creates the trees, the animals, and everything. Lets it thrive for 3,000 some odd years, and then He makes humanity, right, to live on the earth in a paradise type setting, right? Looks beautiful, but there's one discrepancy in the whole thing. There was a seedling of wicked root within Adam, or within the Adamites that he created, right, to be to be given the promise to be from the sons of God to the children of Israel back to the sons of God. That makes sense. Um, so that had to be purged out. Nothing happens by chance, right? Yahweh Shemal Shah constructed this whole thing from the beginning to the end, and we just have to play our part, right? So now imagine we're in paradise, and all of a sudden shit just gets crazy. Now we got to work. We got to work hard and hard and hard, but the land still won't yield the fruit that it once yielded. Eventually, it will, but something has to be destroyed in order for that to get to that process to where we can live in the paradise forever and it truly be paradise. We have to be in the right state of mind. We weren't from the beginning, and this is the process that the Lord chose or the Lord created in order for us to seek righteousness to where at the end result we get the laws in our inward parts, and then we would have what would be called free will, because at that point it would be nothing but the will of Yahweh Shemal Shai. You ever had somebody that you want to, you know what I'm saying? If you turn something over to somebody's care, you want them to have the same mindset that you have so they would care for it as if you would, you know? And that's what the Lord is conditioning us to do because we had spiritual powers in the beginning, right? But we were tyrants on the earth. We were worse than Esau. So think about it. If we didn't feel that sort of shame that we felt from the beginning, which caused the depression and anxiety and emotional disruption in our minds from the beginning, if we weren't able to feel that, we wouldn't be able to be corrected. We wouldn't. If you can't feel shame, you want to do whatever it takes to take away the shame. But look at somebody like Esau. If we didn't feel none of these emotions, and have the will to want to do something about it, we would be just like Esau. Because Esau is the most depressed, anxiety having individual on earth, but he has a system that covers it up the way he doesn't have to show that fear. But he shows it through his greed and through his like he's that insecure that he has to make everybody subjective under him by force. It's a difference when you do it according to righteousness and when you do it according to your wicked mindset. So if we weren't able to go through these things, we would just probably be ended up just like Esau, you know. So the Lord wanted to purge that out of us, and He did it through Yahweh Shai. All right. So let's get Genesis 3:1. It says, "Now the serpent was much more subtle than any beast of the field which Yahweh had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath Yahweh said you may not eat of any tree of the garden?" See, here we go. What is the depression? It says depression is a common yet serious mood disorder that negatively affects how you think, feel, and handle daily activities. He came to her with that. He came to her with that. This is where it starts. So the positive that the Lord gave us, He came at it with a negative. Said the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of all the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Yahweh said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. See that? So now, what is that fruit? That's the philosophies and the worldly knowledge of these other individuals that were around at the time. The trees were in reference to people. You know, the elders done um, lessons on that. I'm not going to go into that, but the trees represents people and their philosophy and their knowledge. You shall know them by their fruits. You see that? So he introduced this adverse way of thinking unto her, and this is how the cycle of depression, anxiety, and negative um, mindsets come about through sin. That's all it comes down to, and we're trying to flee away from that. And it said, and the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for Yahweh do know that in the day you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. That is true. That is true. But what mindset are we going to be in? Because if you don't understand the balance, you have knowledge of good and evil, but your mind will be so corrupted that you're only going to lean towards the evil side, and you're going to despise the good side. So then you're going to try to orchestrate your own sense of good and evil. And that's what Esau is trying to do today. But the scripture says, woe to them to call good evil and evil good. That put darkness for light and light for darkness. And that's just what this is. That's what he's doing in this particular thing right here. And this is what created these negative mindset emotions that we feel all the time through sin. All right. And it says, verse 6, or Genesis 3:6, it says, when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her and did eat. That created a chain reaction. So in the mannerism that she was acting from what she was told by him, she brought that back to the house, and Adam was like, okay, yeah, he followed suit, right? And their eyes were open, their eyes of them both were open, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. All right. So now this fig trees that they sewed together was um was them taking on the customs of these heathen. And really, it could have been two-thirds of our people back then because there's one particular, two particular people that were chosen, well, one particular man that was chosen out of the Adamites that, you know what I'm saying, Yahweh was going to carry his bloodline through. So now they are aware of the foolishness, right? And aware of sin, but they weren't aware of the hope. So now the only thing that they could think about is the negative aspect of the, they couldn't think about, we didn't know about the hope. We didn't know about what this was going to lead to, right? So now, verse 8, it says, and they heard the voice of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day. They ain't never, ever been afraid when they heard the voice of the Lord. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord among the trees of the garden, meaning they try to mingle in, blend in with the people. So the Lord had separated him from everybody else, but now he went to blend in with everybody else. See that? So so they were in fear because they knew they had sinned and they didn't know what the punishment was going to be. So what is that going to bring forth? Depression, anxiety, resentment. Verse 9, it says, and the Lord called unto Adam and said unto him, where art thou? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, and I hid myself. Afraid, the first sign of fear. hmm So, so that fear is what brought forth these emotions and stuff that we feel today. That transgression, rather. It says, verse 11, it says, and he said, who told thee that thou wast naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou should not eat? Have you been talking to these niggas that I told you not to say nothing to? That caused you to alter your mindset in a negative fashion when I gave it to you positively? What if we just had no acknowledgement of the bullshit and we just went through the motions and lived in paradise at the end? Well, now that we know what's going on, we have to go through all this knowing the judgment of the Lord is coming, but he gave us a way of hope through salvation. But sin will cause us to think about salvation in a negative sense. You don't think about, oh, why should I be saved? Why, I'm not important. The Lord didn't care about me. Bullshit. Shut up. Like, for real. Like, those emotions are there to trigger us to move forward in righteousness and through the spirit, because that's the only thing you're going to feel operating according to the flesh. The sense of happiness according to the flesh is nothing but a mirage. It's a disguise for us to live according to the flesh and feel blissfulness because the body wants to return back to the grave. The body wants to go back to the ground where it came from. The spirit is what has the body moving around and alive and gives us a vital sign. You take the spirit away, the body's gonna fall back to the earth and decay. Right, it's decaying as it's standing up. The body like this. Okay. Okay, you want to stand me up and have me move around? Well, guess what? I'm gonna move according to how I want to move. All right. So now let's keep going. Verse 11 said, he said, who told thee that thou wast naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldst not eat? And the man said, the woman which thou gavest me to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. And you know that's where he messed up. That's where he messed up because He chose to listen to her instead of listening to the Lord. But you got to think, what kind of position was he in? This ain't nothing that happened like, oh, one day she came and told him something, and then the next day he was acting like that. No, this was probably a series of events that led up to him changing his lifestyle according to the customs that was told to her by these other niggas, these other individuals. The serpent. It says, and the Lord said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above all beasts of the field. Upon thy belly thou shalt go, and the dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Right. You're going to be in constant place of shame. Constant shame. You're gonna be in confusion the whole time. Look at Esau, he's nothing but a confused man. He has no sense of righteousness at all. So that's why the scriptures come sit down in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Come back in your state of confusion, because what are you doing? You got exalted by Yahweh by Shem Shai, and the only thing you did was spread wickedness all on the earth. Put everybody in a state of depression. That's all Esau does. He's the most depressed individual known to man. And he spreads that wickedness on throughout the whole world with his oppression. You know? Verse 15, it says, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise the head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Okay? Verse 16, here's a major point. It says, unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrows, and thy conception in sorrow. Thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desires oh yeah, it says, in sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be toward to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. All right. Um. Right. So not only is it talking about the pains of childbearing, but you know how painful it is for a woman to bring forth a child in this world, and looking at the world, the state of the world, the way it is, it's rough for a man. Also, it's rough. Parents in general, man. But look at the punishment, the separate punishments, right? It said verse 17, it says, unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten up the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it, cursed is the ground for thy sake, and in sorrow shalt thou eat the fruit of it all thy days of thy life. And it says, and thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. So we're going to be eating, like, because of this, all this pressure, all these emotional disorder, everything is going to be hard. Everything's going to be a struggle. It says, in the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, thou till thou return unto the ground, for out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. See that? So that's how all these adverse feelings and emotions came about. But even within that, the Lord gave us a way of hope. I'm gonna go to 2nd Ezra chapter 7 real quick. But first, um, let me get this. All right, so let's go to 2nd Ezra chapter 7, verse 1. It says, and when I had wait, hold on. Okay. Second Ezra 7:1, it says, and when I had made an end of speaking these words, there was sent unto me the angel which had been sent unto me the nights afore. And he said unto me, Up, Ezra, and hear the word that I am come to tell thee. And because, like, Ezra, he was depressed because he saw the state of Israel. Like, all of Israel was fucked up. Like, we still is, but we have a sense of hope. And the angel was trying to explain to him, like, like Ezra was kind of sort of saying, like, well, how can the Lord love us if we feel all this and going through all that? Well, how can He love us? And the angel replied, like, you think you love the creation more than the Creator does? You're part of the creation, you know. You know, it might not feel good according to the flesh, but it feels exuberating according to the Spirit. All right. So, so the angel was explaining to Ezra why Israel was in the state that it's in, right? And what it's going to flourish and become, what we're going to flourish and become, right? But we have to go through these things in order to get there. All right, 2 Ezra 7:2, it said, He said unto me, Up, Ezra, and hear the words that I have come to tell thee. And I said, Speak on, my power. Then he said unto me, The sea is set in a wide place that it might be deep and great. But the case of the entrance were narrow like a river. Who then could go into the sea to look upon it and rule it? If he went not through the narrow, how could he come to the broad? So when we feel these emotions, like, it's okay to feel them, but understanding how to deal with them spiritually. Don't let them consume us to where we start having an adverse state of mind and having a negative perspective on everything. When we should have a positive perspective on everything because we have the hope of Yahweh by Shem Yahweh Shai. All right. Verse 7:5, it says, Who then could go into the sea to look upon it and to rule it? If he went not through the narrow, how could he come to the broad? There's also another thing. A city is built and set upon a broad field and is full of all good things. And this is what we're trying to get to. Right? It says, the entrance thereof is narrow and is set in a dangerous place to fall, like if there were water, like if there were fire on the right hand and water on the deep. See that? That's what we have to go through. All right? Let's get this precept real quick. 2 Corinthians 4:8, it says, We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. See that? So we're going to go through these things, but the Lord hasn't forsaken us or forgotten us. All right? 2 Ezra 7:8, it says, 7:7, it says, The entrance thereof is narrow and set in a dangerous place to fall, like as if there were fire on the right hand or on the left deep water. That's the furnace of affliction and water in the waters of adversity. That we're going to constantly have to walk down this path, and we see it, and just looking at it is stressing us out, but it really shouldn't be a part of us because as long as we stay on that path, yeah, we're gonna feel the heat from the fire and feel the splashing of and the raging of the water. We're gonna see all those things, but we have to continue to move forward in Yahweh Shem Shai, because sometimes it distracts us and causes us to stop and focus on what we see on both sides of us, not what we see ahead of us. All right. Verse 8, it says, and only one path between them both, even between the fire and the water, so small that there could but one man go there at once. If this city were now given unto a man for an inheritance, if he shall never pass the danger set before it, how shall he receive this inheritance? Right. So going back to Genesis, and like that had to happen. Because like I said, Romans 8:20, the creature was subject to vanity, not willing. Okay. Verse 10 it says, and I said, it is so, Lord. Then said he unto me, even so is it Israel's portion, because for their sakes I made the world, and when Adam transgressed my statutes, then decreed that which is done. That's when everything went to hell. We were in the broad, but then transgressions caused us to enter into the narrow, and the narrow is going to cause us to feel all these things. Verse 12 it says, then were the entrances of this world made narrow, full of sorrow and travail, that they are but few and evil of perils and very painful, man. So we're gonna feel these things, but we still have hope. All we have to do is keep it moving, man. It says, verse 13, it says, for the interests of the elder world were wide and sure and brought immortal fruit. And that we're gonna get back to that. If then they live and if then they that live labor not to enter these straits and vain things, they can never receive those things which are laid up for them. See that? So yes, we're gonna feel these emotions, man. But we have to understand and learn what to do with them spiritually. We can use them as motivation to drive us closer to righteousness instead of allowing them to consume us and put us in an adverse way of thinking about things, especially when we're in Yahweh Shemel Shai. Right? I want to get a couple inspirational scriptures. This is Psalms 30 and 11. It says, "You have turned for me my mourning into." Proverbs 30 and 11 says, "You have turned for me my mourning into dancing. You have loosed my sackcloth and clothes with me with gladness." Right? Putting on that we're not in the house of mirth, but we rejoice in our afflictions because of Yahweh Shemel Shai, and putting on our strength, which is that beautiful garment. You know, Psalms 3 and 3 it says, "But you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and my lifter of my head." So we always have to go back to Yahweh Shemel Shai, a lifter of our head to renew our strength. Isaiah 40 and 31 it says, "But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength, and they shall mount up like with wings like eagles." And that's the ultimate end result. It said, "They shall run and not be weary, they shall walk and not faint." Philippians 4 and 13. "I can do all things through him who strengthens me." We can conquer and overcome anything, man. John 16 and 33 it says, "I have said these things to you that in me you may have peace." That's Yahweh Shai talking. "In the world you will have tribulations." All right. So, but take the heart, I have overcome the world. So we have to take on that same mindset of Yahweh Shai, because he overcame the world. And we overcome the world and these thoughts and emotions by faith in him. It's a bunch of more scriptures we can go on and on and on, but we have to understand and realize um we got to walk according to the Spirit. Isaiah 41 and 10, it says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your power. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteousness, with my righteous right hand." That's up, and that righteous right hand is Yahweh Shai. That's why we got to wait on Yahweh Shai, man. Psalms 143 and 7, it says, "Answer me quickly, O Lord. My spirit fails. Hide not your face from me." And that's what we ask on a daily basis when we pray. "Lest I be like those who go down to the pit. Let me hear, let me hear in the morning of your steadfast love, for in you I trust. Make me know the way I should go, for to you I lift up my soul," man. And we're only going through this because he's angry, man. But he's not gonna be angry for long, man. He's not gonna be angry for long. All right, so um, these are, let me see something real quick. Some things. Um, Also changing your diet, man. Um, Actually, like because a lot of it has to do with inflammation throughout the body. Um, uh, Low vitamins like vitamin D and B12 and magnesium can also cause uh, mood disorders. So correcting any deficiencies you may have, um, any inflammation can cause, um, you know, disruption in the body, which could create mood swings and depression and anxiety. Um, Actually, like the Hebrew Mediterranean style diet, um, reduces inflammation in the body, and which can be linked with depression. So following the dietary laws, eating a lot of green leafy vegetables, lean proteins and things like that. And there's also some certain herbs. See, I used to go into things like this. I used to have a long time ago. I used to have a well, not a long time. Probably maybe about 7, 8 years ago. I had an herbal meds page, and I used to go into certain things like this. Um, you have herbs like lavender helps, sage helps, um, chamomile helps, um, Stefan extract helps. St. John's wort helps. Milk thistle helps. Um, what is that? That 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 herb that Arakar gave me. Like sometimes disruption in the liver can cause depression and things like that also. But I mean, exercising, walking, jogging, aerobics, things like that, man. Um, Social, being around the brothers, being around people that are like minded. Because sometimes depression will cause you to want to be alone and withdraw from everybody, but that's not a good place for you to be, especially when you're trying to deal with emotions. Sometimes you need to be around people that can help uplift you. But this goes out to anybody that's suffering from this right now. We have hope in Yahweh Shai. Shai. We have no hope in the world. The world is going to just pile on those these type of emotions and cause us to try to be pulled back into the matrix. But we have hope. The Lord, Yahweh Shema Shah promised, even though we're gonna go, He's gonna put us through this. He's gonna bring us through it. All right, and we're gonna come out with being glorified by Him in the end. All right. Lord, willing this lesson to edify to serve this purpose for the hope and elect, the ones who truly believe in the name Yahweh Shema Shai. With that, like say, call Halayim La Yahweh, Bashem Yahweh Shai, Bashem Harakak Wadash Ma'amah. Double honor to the elder apostles of Great Millstone, double honor to our elder apostle as well, and her one by Yasharala down here in the Lions Den camp. Salutations to the Arkham that are pushing the truth, sincerity, and truth, and peace and blessing to the men, women, and children that believe in the name Yahweh Shema Shai. Shalom.